I was just thinking it's interesting that I've just done a little bit of work studying Africa just because our son was there beginning of the year, and I wanted to study something about it. Udo had been working with people in Hungary. I had never been, so I had some reading history and some novels and so forth. And it's interesting, the same, it's interesting to see how Udo mentioned last time Nadezhda Mandelstam's books, Hope Against Hope and Hope of Land and Bloodshed. Her husband, Osip Mandelstam, was an amazing poet, and he was killed by Stalin. And she phenomenally, because his poems could not be kept written down, they would have been too dangerous, kept them all in her mind by reciting them over and over again until the Soviet Union fell. So that when the Soviet Union fell, she was able to write them down, she was able to write his life story. So she preserved his wonderful poetry for us in her own mind. But it's interesting because in those books, Osip Mandelstam's opinion was, he was obviously a Jew, that the Soviet Union was able to come about, really, and install its ideology because the people had already been prepared to have that mindset through the Orthodox Church, because the Orthodox Church had taught an idea of complete obedience, complete submission, and silence on the part of the people. Just repeat the service in a language they did not understand. The listener did not understand the language, just like the Roman Catholic Church was repeating the Mass in a language people didn't understand. And pray and sing and so forth, but not in the sense of using your mind. And Osip Mandelstam really felt that prepared people to accept Stalinism and Marxism first and then Stalinism, because they already felt they weren't individuals, they already took no private responsibility for their lives or their thinking. But what struck me in reading African things is that, though it's obviously in a sense vastly different, it was after the end of colonialization, the model they followed was taken from the Soviets. That's the model most of the dictators, because they were dictators, adopted. So they looked to the Soviets for their governance, for their running their countries and so forth. They adopted that model. And it just struck me listening to the lecturing tonight that their tribal religions, because that were so clearly evidenced in the novels I read, of governing, the people being governed by the spirit world, which produced just fear and terror, as Vietnam has said in his book he just wrote last year on Africa, prepared them for this Soviet model, just the way the Orthodox Church prepared the Russian people, because it also had taught that the individual is just nothing. You're subject to the spirits, you're subject to the witch doctor, you're subject to the chief of the village and so forth, but the individual is not being trained to think, to react, to take responsibility. And it was striking to see how this model was imposed on Africa, and it's tragic. It's tragic because it has taken what was already a very sad situation and made it so much worse. But I was thinking how much the mindset, because it's not, you wouldn't think of tribal religions as being an ideology, but in a way it is, because it's always the spirits and your ancestors or whatever who are not present, who are always being taken into consideration. My grandparents were missionaries in China, and their stories about China were very similar too. You dare not do anything different than what's been done, because your ancestors are looking over your shoulder, and you've got to obey them and spirits, because apparently, grandparents always said there was, the house idol that had to have food first before the family and so forth, but always fear that you don't dare change anything. So, same in China, same in Africa. What it does is have a mindset that does not prepare people to say, just thinking of what you said, wait a minute, I'm not so sure about that. Because that has just not been culturally acceptable or practiced at all.
Yeah.
I have a question. What is the, what do you see as the political purpose of ideology? It doesn't exist in a vacuum, in other words. I mean, why is it embraced by certain classes? Why was it embraced by Stalin? We haven't talked about that, and I think it's kind of important. It's important to understand why it's really so.
Well, Helen, I think there's several things I could want to say. One is it offers the resolution of a basic insecurity we all experience. And that is, it gives us, you know, a slogan, a color, a flag, a nationality, a color of skin, whatever, that seems to bundle us together in a common stream. And therefore, I'm not quite as insecure because I'm not doing it alone. Then I think on the part of Stalin, it was personal power. Really it was, you know, real disregard for human beings, needing to be on top, winning. You know, it's a boxing match.
So it's a useful